What are you getting wrong with PR? Why should you stop sending the same old format, the same old template for your press release? We're going to talk about it in this particular episode. You can't miss it. Oh my gosh, you're going to love this. So welcome to this edition of Association Chat. It's your weekly online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, with thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the producer and host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italienne, CEO of Amplify Growth, where I focus on digital strategy and asking better questions. In today's show, we're going to ask even more questions than ever before, specifically about the evolving world of PR for and how all of us can stay on top of an ever-shifting digital landscape while still charged with achieving our organization's missions. If you've ever crafted a press release or called up friends that you know in the press and you've crossed your fingers that you're going to get coverage, or if you've ever wanted to work on getting your own press to build your own platform and thought leadership, you're going to want to hear from today's guest. We have Kristen Sala. She is the director of Cision's U.S. Media Research Team, which is the powerhouse behind Cision's U.S. Media Database. And she's also an active member of Help a Reporter Out, or HARO. She's part of the editorial staff there. So it's fascinating stuff. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Kristen, are you ready to get started?
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Fantastic. So before we get too far into it, I rattled off a lot of stuff about Cision and HARO and all of this lovely, brand mentions where some people may not be familiar with HARO or Cision. And so why don't you share with us a little bit about where you work and some of the work that you're doing there.
So I work for Cision, which is HARO's parent company. So Cision essentially offers, PR software to help out the public relations experience. It's really a workflow software. So you can use the software to pull a list of journalists you want to pitch to those journalists, monitor your media mentions, and then also get analysis on the success of that campaign. So that's Cision's primary workflow software. We also have HARO, which is a platform where journalists and public relations or sources, experts can connect. So essentially the way that platform works is a journalist will reach out and say, hey, I'm writing XYZ story and I need to speak to an expert, or I'm looking for statistics about a particular topic. And it's very simple the way it works. Essentially, a source receives 3 daily digests that just contain these journalist queries, different stories that various journalists are writing about. And they also detail what information those journalists need from those sources. And so at that point, the sources can pick and choose which ones fit their coverage and can reply. It's as simple as that.
I mean, and it's amazing, you guys, if you haven't ever tried this out. Now, I've been aware of HARO for a while, and it's super easy. It's fascinating to me to go through and receive these digests and see, like, what are the questions, what are the queries that the journalists have, what are the stories that they're interested in. And, I wish that I took advantage of it more often. But, before, in the weeks leading up to this particular episode, I was shocked and I shared this with you before we went live today. I was shocked to find out that a lot of people, on our private Facebook group for Association Chat weren't aware of HARO at all, which was shocking to me. So, thanks for telling us a little bit about what HARO does. What I really invited you here for today was to share your expertise, obviously, as part of Cision's team, as part of HARO's editorial team. you work constantly with, this shifting landscape in PR. And so there's a lot of different challenges and opportunities that are facing everyone as far as, what they're dealing with when they're trying to get the word out about, their mission, their goals, their businesses. What would you say are, some of the, the best ways for organizations to get the word out when they're dealing in this atmosphere where it's nonstop content, nonstop social media, nonstop news, and it's so noisy that to break through that and to reach, even to reach the journalists that they want to work with, it seems almost impossible.
Right. And that is where platforms like HARO come in, but this doesn't just have to be done through HARO. I mean, HARO makes it easy. It does present, the hero stories that journalists are working on for you to see and to get a leg up on those. But I think, in general, to get eyes on you, a lot of it is related to some trends that are in the media right now, which one of them is what you mentioned. It's the dominance of everyone can be a source, right? There's so much content out there. Social media and mobile both dictate that almost anyone can claim themselves to be an expert or a source in something. I think also, and I'm sorry if I'm looking to the side, I have notes up on a monitor.
Oh, no, that's okay. I look over here. I'm the one-man band, so I'm like always looking over to the side to see what's going on Facebook Live and on Twitter. So you're good. You're good.
I think a few other trends are also at play that I'm seeing. It's not just the fact that there is content everywhere. It's the fact that especially now with, tumultuous political times, particularly in the US, but also in other nations, there is a very acutely critical eye on journalism, which really does, it impacts, how PR does their business and interacts with the journalist. And lastly, because of social media, there is kind of a rush to get news out there first. So it is a good question. How do you make yourself stand out? And so kind of the premise of what I wanted to talk about today is, yes, it's about pitching. Pitching is important, and I do have tips around that. But it's also managing your reputation outside of just the pitch. There are some stats that show, I think in 2015 were the latest stats I could pull up, but Google reported that they field over 1 billion searches per day. 1 billion, per month. Yeah. And given that, it's pretty obvious that, when you pitch to a journalist, that journalist is going to say, okay, does this pitch fit what I'm covering? And then they're going to take it a step further and they're going to Google you. They're going to look you up because it's really important for them right now with a critical eye on them to, make sure that they're dealing with reputable people. And so knowing that and knowing also for associations, I know a primary concern I read about is that, membership, it's keeping your membership, it's gaining new membership. So all of these people, they're going to look to the internet to see what sort of internet presence you have. And so it's of utmost importance to keep your internet presence as spot shape as possible. I think there are a few things to really make yourself stand out and make your internet presence, look really good. And one is becoming a publisher yourself. If you're not doing it already, working on publishing your own articles, co-sponsoring studies, along maybe with partnering with other associations to do so, that makes you a firsthand expert in something once you start doing that and makes you a voice for your industry. I think being social, sharing news. So, not just publishing your own stuff, but sharing what other associations maybe have published, sharing what members within your association have published. And it's not just sharing on social, it's linking things to your own website. It is sharing on social. It's making sure things get mentioned in maybe your association newsletters as well.
So when you work a lot with different journalists and talk a little bit about the ways that people on both sides can make the most of these platforms and make the most of everything from pitching to building these relationships, what are you seeing as far as the things that absolutely, like, you would say, yeah, I'll stake my career on, like, this is what works almost every time. And these are the things that you just stop doing this now, or else you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Like, do you have like some absolute definitely do this and definitely don't do that?
With actually pitching, I think, definitely consider that you aren't the only one that can necessarily answer the questions. Consider who you're presenting as experts to the journalist. Don't limit it to, just the CEO or the head of your organization. Look to your membership. Look to people that you've partnered with. Can any of them, be experts that you can tout their expertise in a certain area to kind of solidify those relationships you have with those people as well. The other thing is obviously keeping it concise. We are in a busy world, as you mentioned. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of content. Journalists, particularly members of HARO, go through hundreds, if not thousands, of pitches per day, and are often juggling multiple stories at once. And so, keeping it concise, on point, making sure that you are addressing every aspect of what that journalist query asks for. These are definite things that you need to be doing.
So are there common stories that you hear from reporters where they say, oh my gosh, this is the thing that I get so sick of. This is what people, like, you won't believe that people still do this. Do you hear anecdotes like that? Could you share some of them?
We do, and most commonly they link to mispitching. Like, this person sent me a press release that was nothing like what I, had asked for in my journalist query. That is the first thing that will break that relationship or break any chance of having a relationship with that journalist.
And I love that you actually zone in on the word relationship there, because I think that we get so focused on scalability and on trying to, it's like, let me post this blog post and reconfigure it and share it here and do this. We get kind of caught up in it, and I think we forget to make things individualized so that it actually hits the mark. We are focused so much on trying to sort of extend our reach that we forget that it has to be relevant to people too. And and I think, it's crazy because you might reach 100 people and turn all 100 people off, or you could really focus it in on like 5 people and know what you're doing and see success. So, it's a strange thing with that. I think that the building of the relationships, people gloss over that.
Yeah, it is important. It's about, as you said, having respect, showing respect. It's about trying to, your ultimate goal is you want to try to stay ahead of the industry trends. You want to try to stay ahead. And by having established relationships, it will help you to do that. It will help you to be able to very quickly get the word out. It will help you to very quickly, get word of trends that are happening. I look at it as a job. When you leave an employer, you don't want to burn bridges, right? Because you want to have that person on your resume. You want to go to a new job and have that new job be able to call that old job and get a reference. It kind of the same concept really applies to the PR journalist relationship. You want to establish those relationships. You want to, if you do have a big piece of news that's coming out, you want to have these go-to people that you can lean on to help you get that word out.
Right. So you want to be like, get to know us. We are the authority on X, which is perfect for associations, So we are the authority on X. We're your go-to place. I'm your go-to person for this. I will connect you with the expert you're looking for. And so those people need to be able to, they need to connect with all of the reporters who maybe that's their beat, or that's the type of thing that they write about on a regular basis. Right. The relationship building is a big part of it. Is there anything else where it's when people are reaching out? I mean, you don't want to go to the well too many times. And obviously a reporter can't just have that one person. They need sort of a stable of different people that they can go to. So likewise on the association side, or for anyone who's looking to get press out, you have to look outside of the usual suspects for building those regular relationships. You know, what are your suggestions on ways to do that in a sort of strategic way where they can get, I don't know, be smarter about the time that they spend in figuring out what reporters are covering what topic that might be related to their, you know, expertise?
Yeah, I mean, and not to tout the product, but HARO is one good source of that. You know, when you are an expert or a source and you can sign up for HARO, you can indicate that you specifically want to receive topical feeds. So you can specifically say, I want to receive only technology queries, only health queries, and sign up that way. And from seeing who is publishing these queries, you get an idea of, okay, who covers, you know, these topics, who are the journalist influencers in that arena. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I've got a really great question over here from Layla. Hi, Layla. Yes, it's so good to see you. And Layla, she's someone who's sort of masterful at pitching herself, but I love her question. What's the best intro email or call that you've gotten to pique a reporter's interest without getting too salesy or cutesy? She'd love to hear the most memorable ones. And I don't know if you like where you fall in that line, but do you have any examples?
So I wouldn't say that I myself am a person that would be, you know, contacted with calls like this, but just based on research that I've done, you know, a lot of times getting too salesy or cutesy is not the way to do it. I think people start going that route and very quickly it can be overdone or misdone. Honestly, I think the pitches that work the best are the ones that are concise while at the same time offering all the information that's needed without leaving any open-ended questions for the journalist. Again, it comes down to time, it comes down to juggling multiple tasks, and it comes down to time management, and they don't have time to be following up. And so you kind of, as a communicator, you want to anticipate that when you're reaching out.
How often is it that somebody should maybe try to connect with a reporter? I mean, I'm not just talking about HARO, but you know, you don't want to keep pestering. You want to build a relationship where you're not the nuisance, right? You're not the drain on the person's time. You're actually an asset, right?
You know, and it's interesting. I think as the director of the media research department at Cision, I actually bring a little unique perspective to that because a lot of our job, and this is what we have in common with PR pros, is also reaching out to the media, right? We're responsible for maintaining that media database, and the way we do it is by reaching out to the journalists. And there is kind of a method to our madness because we have that same concern. If we overreach out, if we're getting in touch with somebody daily, weekly, they're going to be like, okay, get me out of your database. You guys are crazy. You know, so there's a method, and you want to spread things out. Now, I think a journalist, you know, if you have unique news that isn't published elsewhere, obviously they're more receptive to that. But I would say, you know, in general, you probably don't want to reach out to them more than once a month. Harassing them with the same topic or the same issue all the time. It could definitely
you know, that's actually really helpful to know because, you know, part of our discussion today, I feel we're always looking at feeding the content monster, whether you're the one responsible for creating the content, whether you're the one that's responsible for coming up with the stories or writing the stories or wherever you fall in that ecosystem of crazy. We're responsible for feeding this because every single day, you know, we've got to fill those feeds, got to churn that information out. And how are we staying top of mind?
Not to interrupt, but that being said, I think in terms of pitching once a month, but it's interesting that you bring up how do you stay top of mind, because interacting doesn't have to be pitching, right? You could be following that person on Twitter or on Facebook, sharing the stories that they've written, that they've shared.
I love it. I love it. Yes, more relationship building.
You know, that puts you on their radar. Yeah, it's relationship building. It puts you on their radar. It shows them that you are interested in more than just them writing about that pitch. You're interested in them, their career as a person. And so sharing their content, you know, commenting on their content are ways that you can kind of interact in between that pitching cycle.
That's a really great, what are some other things that people can do along the way? I mean, you know, as far as whether it's building those relationships, crafting a sort of a steady plan on how often that they're reaching out. Do you have any other tips for how people should build these relationships with their journalists, or build their content even?
Yeah, sure. So, I think, as I said, sharing their content, I think, is a great way. When you do reach out, it's respecting them. It's respecting their boundaries. It's if you are on HARO and you know what the query is, it's following those instructions to the T. Because again, like I said, the number one complaint we hear is, I was mispitched. This isn't the topic I was looking for, or I asked for this information, but they gave me this information. So, it's respecting that they know what they're looking for. They know what they're writing about. And so, and I realize you're an expert in your area, but they also have a story to draft. And so you have to understand that.
Well, what if things go south with people who reach out to, reporters, and they have a poor experience on their side of things, where they are providing this content, this information, and then something falls apart or goes awry on the reporter's side? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and that has happened as well, where, on HARO specifically, we have rules for journalists that you can't, for example, ask for any monetary compensation from a spokesperson or an expert. And we've had these types of things happen before. Or, I think what more commonly will happen is, one of the other rules is that journalists should, if they're going to use a source in a story, they should provide the source with the link to the final story. And this doesn't happen. And I'll often have sources write in saying, we're not sure if this got published or not. The journalist never followed back up with us. What's going on? We're kind of in this holding pattern. So I will say with the first scenario, and actually with both scenarios, we do actively, as the editorial team on HARO, reach out to journalists and try to coach them in best practices as well. So this isn't just a one-sided thing. We're not just coaching sources. We coach the journalists as well, because it is best practice to keep that communication line open also. But the other thing I would advise is just for you as a source to always have Google Alerts set up for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have to understand that sometimes what happens is, because journalists are so busy, even if a story does get published and they fully intend to let you know it, they sometimes don't let you know it for weeks later.
Well, and sometimes I know on the freelancer, like if they're a freelance journalist, sometimes on their side, they don't know when it gets published either, so they're like, I have no idea, good luck, and 2 months later it comes out. By that time, they've moved on and they're not even thinking about it. And so
setting sort of alerts to monitor, kind of take the initiative of monitoring your own content is needed as well. Like I said, sometimes letting you know it's been published is delayed. And so, this way you'll be on top of it and you'll know as soon as it comes out and be able to share that content and tweet it and all of that.
So let's talk about the fact that journalism doesn't look the way that it used to. And in fact, sometimes it's worthwhile to talk to some crazy lady from Association Chat, which is not, the Washington Post. Sometimes it's worthwhile to talk to people who have these little niche, venues, channels for communication. And so how do you guide people on when something's legit, when it's not, when it's worth their time, when it's not? Because it just kind of goes all over the place. There's this huge, and I talk a lot about like influencer marketing and stuff, but it's really hard to gauge whether someone should spend their time, on something where it's so niched that you don't know whether it really makes a difference.
Yeah, speaking from the perspective of HARO specifically, I would say, when in doubt, probably don't bother. Don't waste your time. If you're not 100% certain that what you have to offer matches what that journalist is looking for, you're probably not going to get chosen, and it's going to be a waste of your time to try to craft that pitch. It really comes down to what the ultimate goals of you or your organization are as well. There are a variety of news outlets out there, and obviously, the elephant in the room are the fake news sites as well, which you want to be careful. You want to be careful who you're pitching to. You do want to do a little bit of at least initial research on the outlet itself to figure out, is this in line with the goals of myself or my organization? Yeah.
Right, right. So here's another question for you. And that is that, you know, I think that sometimes people can get a little too salesy in their pitches where it completely turns people off and they don't understand where they went wrong, or, you know, how they might be charismatic in person, but somehow they're communicating it's all sales pitch. And so the difference between pitching a story and becoming a resource or a source and selling a product or a service, it's very different. It's a different thing. And so, you know, could you talk a little bit about that, on some guidelines for people who are reaching out? Like, what should they make sure that they not do when they're reaching out to come across as too salesy?
I mean, again, it's looking at the query. If they're looking for products, pitch your product by all means. But the majority of queries that we see coming through HARO are looking for thought leadership experts. They're looking for people that know about a concept or an industry. They're not looking for product pitching. They're not looking for, you know, touting your business. It's touting what your business does, I suppose, in a way that's not directly, hey, give business to, you know, my company, my industry. You want to be able to speak to the industry as a whole that you're in. You want to have some insights on what some of the you know, problems and challenges within that industry are. These are things that are going to really get you ahead as a thought leader. Again, it's not about touting your product, your specific company. It's about talking about the industry as a whole.
Are there trends in some of the types of queries that you're seeing coming through where, you know, maybe it's that reporters are interested in one type of story versus another? What do you see happening with that?
You know, we get a pretty good variety in terms of, you know, the industry or the topic they cover. We get a pretty good variety through HARO. I do see more and more journalists who are offering specific questions that they want answered within the body of their query, rather than leaving it open-ended. And I think, again, it probably comes down to their time. They want to make sure that the things they really need to address in their story are being addressed by the expert. So I wouldn't say any one industry is more dominant than the other, though.
So we have a question over here. And by the way, anyone who's participating live on the Crowdcast platform, one of the benefits of participating live is that you are able to type in your questions and we're able to answer them. You can upvote the questions over under this question and answers tab. So whether you're participating on Crowdcast through your mobile device or you're, you know, on your laptop or desktop, you can type in your questions here, get upvoted, and we can answer them on screen with you right now. And one of the questions we had, Andy asks, can you give us one or two best practices for social media? And I don't know, I guess this is connected to, I don't know, getting the word out. Andy, if you're on here right now, you can specify or clarify over to this side, but any specific thoughts on that?
Sure. You know, I think one thing that immediately comes to mind, and maybe it's given the question that we just discussed, is, you know, making sure you're not looking too salesy on social media as well. This isn't just about the direct pitch to the journalist. Again, going back to what I was first talking about, is you want to maintain your online reputation in general. You want to look like a credible source, a credible expert. And so with social media, it's not always about me. It's not always the stories that I've written or the stories that I've been featured in. It's kind of, you know, evening that out with sharing stories that other people have written that maybe apply to your industry, or, you know, even sharing a little bit of personal information about yourself to just apply that kind of personal nature to your social media handle. So it's not all business all the time. There's actually a personal side to me as well. I'm a human being. I think those are some important tips.
You know, it's interesting because there is it's really hard to know whether you're being too self-promotional or, you know, whether it's just a matter of, if you don't toot your own horn, there ain't no music, you know, I mean, like, it's like, there's this delicate balance. And I think these days, you know, we kind of get tired of, especially when we all know the people who it's their thing, you know, sometimes I feel like that with association chat, even though I feel like it is a community where it's offering a resource to people. And I wonder how much is too much, you know? And so, I don't know. I mean, what do you see on your side of things? Like, how have you figured out that balance, or have you?
I mean, I think, you know, our company as a whole does a fairly good job of it. I mean, we do have products. Obviously, we're a business. We have products that we're trying to push, products that we're trying to sell. But, you know, first and foremost, you want to be thought leaders for somebody to take you seriously. And so it's not just about buy my products. It's about, hey, we did this study on, you know, the public relations industry or the journalism industry. Here are key trends. For example, we published earlier this year the State of the Media report, which talks about trends going on in media, you know, how journalists are feeling about their reputation with the public, how they're feeling about their relationship with PR. So it's publishing content like that, but it's also, again, sharing other people's content. And I think for associations, shining some spotlight on your membership is really important, to make them feel like there is a reason I am a member of this organization. There's a reason I'm here. This is what differentiates this from some, you know, random Facebook chat group, for example. There's a reason. Right. And so it's, you know, I think if you publish something that is self-promotional, try to balance it with publishing something else. Like I said, a personal tidbit, personal insight on something, or, you know, someone else's story.
Okay, so I'm going to ask us to pause right here for just a second. First of all, what do you guys think? Is this not amazing stuff? It's absolutely excellent. I am so happy, Kristen, that you're with us today. I do want to pause for a brief second and remind everyone that if you're hearing stuff, if you're hearing takeaways that are just knocking you out, like there's some great conversation happening at the hashtag ASSNCHAT, ass in chat, where you can go on Twitter and find some of the takeaways that people are sharing already. Cision's doing an awesome job tweeting. But also, if you want to put in your questions, your comments, your thoughts, go ahead and take this opportunity, because before we go into part 2 of this amazing discussion, I want to share a few words of thanks to our awesome silver sponsors. Association Chat has 2 amazing sponsors who are partners really with us and have been supporting us along the way so that we can grow. So Association Studios and Fontiva, mwah, we love you. I hope you're enjoying today's chat too, for those of you from both of those companies who are online today. Couple words about our sponsors. Association Studios provides videos that engage your members. Association Studios is a team of expert writers, video professionals, and social media strategists dedicated to creating engaging videos exclusively for associations. While you're thinking about how rockstar awesome they are, check out your friends, our friends at Fontiva and their member nation that will take you and your organization's experience with an AMS to new heights and greater connections with members. You can find out more about these great sponsors on associationchat.com under Meet Our Partners, or find them on Twitter at ASSNSTUDIOS for Association Studios, and Fontiva Inc. at Fontiva Inc. And tell them your friends at Association Chat said thank you. All right, so as we get back into part 2, you guys, I am just thinking so much about the thought leadership part of things. I'm thinking about association executives who I personally know, who have a lot to offer, who are great in person, who are doing great things for their organizations, but they're just not connecting to sort of get their thought leadership out there. So a lot of times I have these conversations with people and they're like, what do I need to do in order to build that thought leadership? certainly you have advice and experience with seeing these people when they are sort of, taking that first step. What would you say to them? What would you say to association executives who are maybe just starting to look outwardly and say, okay, I want to develop my own thought leadership in this space beyond this organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. Yes, you want to build it beyond the organization, but sometimes you need the organization to kind of give you a little foothold. So as I stated, I think, relationships, sharing each other's content is really important. So seeing if you can get your own content maybe linked within the organization's website as a start would be a really good thing. I think it's also important, if you do, send out a pitch to a journalist and you are featured in a story, take that extra step and ask the journalist if they will link back to your content. Take that extra step and ask the journalist if they'll link back to your social. It doesn't hurt, and it also, puts you kind of on the radar of their audience as well, and will in turn expand your audience.
Yeah. And I love this. So Bruce over here, Bruce, you're awesome. I've only heard about you in emails, but here you are. He says, tag journalists you have a relationship with on Twitter when you can, and share articles that they write. They will appreciate it. Yeah, you're giving them love. You are building that relationship. And I think there's that reciprocity that you're working on, where it's like, hey, you're making me look good. I'm going to help you look good too, you know?
Totally. Before we forget, I actually wanted to draw people's attention to the poll questions.
Yes,
because we have talked a lot about social media and sharing things on social, and also touting, the association's touting the expertise of their members. So we do have 3 poll questions to ask the audience. And so I've been told that through Crowdcast, the audience can click on the polls button to cast their vote. Mm-hmm. And those that are on Facebook Live and Periscope can just type their thoughts and their responses if they're interested in sharing as well. But the 3 questions we have are, have you incorporated social media into your PR workflow? And it's just a yes or no question. We also asked, when your organization has received a media mention, do you share it on social? And again, a yes or no question. And finally, do you often tout your members as experts when pitching, or do you focus primarily on your association executives? And for this one, obviously, there's 2 potential answers. One is I regularly tout the expertise of my members when pitching, or I usually focus on the expertise of executives.
Yeah. And I added a third one on there, which is we have a healthy mix of both, which exactly 0 people have clicked on. So there you go. We'll see if that changes. I don't know. Also on the first one, have you incorporated social media into your PR workflow? Most people are saying yes, but there's one that says, I don't think we have a PR workflow, which, hey, maybe you should get one. And by the way, hi, Jed. Jed was saying, Bruce, bringing the knowledge nuggets. Yeah, but he said, love your shows. And Jed, by the way, if you guys ever want to check out any of his shows, I've been connected with him since Blab days. So there's the Blab platform, Huzza, and here we have Crowdcast. So he's amazing. Anybody following on Crowdcast, anyone seeing this later, you should definitely check him out. He's amazing.
Oh, I think he's blushing now.
I know. I love it. So we're talking about, how people can actually take some of these trends, take some of these tactics, take some of these platforms and actually use it to amplify both their organization's missions, but also their own thought leadership. One thing that I wanted to do, that was me, Kiki, we're working on PR. One thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the examples that you've seen or case studies that you've seen of organizations that have done it right. They're working on things, they're making an impact using PR in a proactive way. Do you have any good examples that you could share with us?
Yeah, we do. I mean, through HARO, we see success stories quite frequently, and it's from both the journalists and the source arenas. We'll see journalists that have been so appreciative of any commentary that sources have provided, and likewise, sources who have gotten mentions on Good Morning America, USA Today, very, very high visibility platforms because of their interaction with the product. We even have a few success stories, case studies in which, during a few years ago and during the recession, how HARO really helped businesses kind of carve their own niche and be successful during a difficult time like that. So, outreach content, it's extremely important. As I've mentioned, it just really solidifies you as an expert. And I think making sure you can get the content out there and are proactive about it, and don't let social handles run dry and things like that is super important to the success of your overall organization.
Yeah. I think that there are some examples where people can go really right. There are examples where people can go really wrong. And I love some of the feedback I'm getting on the Facebook Live side of things too. This is really fantastic, guys. Here's my question for you. Going back to part one, going back to what we just kind of had when we first started, there is this climate of distrust, mistrust for journalists right now. And it's a strange thing where it's not like we haven't faced this before as a nation, but it's a strange thing where a lot of people just aren't sure whether they can trust what they see in the media as much as they once did. However, I have to say that as someone who studied journalism in college, most journalists I know actually really care deeply about making sure that they do a really good job of providing something that, if not completely fair and balanced, is darn close, like as close as they can possibly get. So they want to be able to communicate, in my experience, fairly. Like they really do want to do a good job. So I guess I have a different perspective when I hear things about people sort of attacking the media. Where I wanted to go with this was I wanted to talk a little bit about, how you're seeing it impact things in the way that people are connecting with people using the HARO platform, and the types of questions that they're asking. Is it impacting what you're doing on your side? What are you seeing in relation to this sort of shift on a national level?
So, on our side of things, as I mentioned, I think we've definitely seen more queries from journalists giving specific answers that they want, or questions that they want answered, rather than leaving it open-ended. I think they want to make sure that the focus stays where it should be and that people are not answering and giving their own agenda, ideally. Yeah. I've definitely seen more requests for stats and things like that. And actually one tip that I have, which seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes you forget, is if you are providing the stats, make sure you're citing where those came from. But there definitely has been an increase in journalists wanting statistics and wanting them from reputable sources. I think working on HARO, we've even seen from the public relations side, we've had sources writing in, questioning the legitimacy of certain journalists, things like that. I've definitely seen that on the rise, and I understand it is because of the climate out there. And so we do try to take those on a case-by-case basis and deal with them as needed through the platform. But yeah, I agree. There is just such a microscope right now in journalism. Not that facts were not important before; they always have been. But the microscope that's on it now, as a result of just social media information being so quickly disseminated, and sometimes it turns into a game of telephone where people's words get twisted. Yeah, we've definitely seen people wanting to focus more on keeping the focus where keeping the story focused on a specific topic, and making sure that they are cross-checking and double-checking and looking into the sources where they're getting the information from.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And it's a strange thing because I think that while people are not trusting more traditional media as much as they used to, they're still hungry for information. And on the other side of it, I see a lot of people flocking to bloggers and to people like me, where it's like we're putting out this content. And trust me, not everybody does have a background in journalism. Like there's, not everybody does. And it's interesting to me that while it's challenging for people who have pursued that more traditional path in traditional journalism, there is this new sort of wild frontier with the bloggers and podcasters and all of that. And so it's kind of interesting because I think that everybody's trying to figure out the best way to work together, but it does feel kind of wild out there. And like on both sides of the equation, you can't quite figure out, how to make sure that it's, things aren't too salesy or biased or whatever. I mean, everybody's looking for the best quality for the most part, I think,
Yeah, agreed. Again, the best quality as quickly as they can get it, though.
As quickly as,
that's right. A really big factor, and that's something that we really tout. We do often have sources write into us through HARO asking for advice on how can I get my pitch noticed, and it's, you got to respond quickly. Not only does it need to be complete, but it needs to be fast, because the life cycle of a pitch or of a query is not very long at all.
No, it's not. It's not. That's great. How long? I mean, what does that look like usually?
Yeah, I mean, we usually advise, respond to a query as soon as you see it in your inbox if you can. While journalists often do offer deadlines for their story, and sometimes the deadlines, they can give something a week in advance. Oftentimes, the pitches that they're going to look at are the ones that come in first and foremost. Again, it's because we do see journalists working on multiple stories at once, and it gets difficult to keep your eye on all of those pitches for an entire week straight. And so the ones that are there first are the ones that are most likely to get the most play.
All right. Well, I guess what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you one more question selfishly because it's my question and I want to throw it out there just for fun. And also because I'm actually genuinely intrigued at what your answer is going to be. And so my question for you is, all right, so what about association chat? Here you are. You've probably done a little bit of research on the online community and this podcast. And so it's a very niched audience and market. What would you suggest to me and my team for ways to get more reach, relevance, and resonance with an eye toward growth?
Interesting. I knew you were going to do this to me.
I know.
I mean, obviously it's, obviously you have a network of association executive members that are part of this chat. It's networking with linking things to their sites. The outbound links I think are really important. The SEO is really important. You want, if somebody is going to Google phrases like association news or association advice, you want to be at the top of those searches, ideally. That's how you attract more interest and more audience and more membership. So, it's important to network. It's important to get those outbound links. It's important to consistently interact, I think, with the audience, and also reaching out to potential audience that, either you've lost in the past or that you've yet to, attract to your product.
I love it. Thank you. Are there any final words, any final word of advice that you give to everyone listening right now before I let you off the hook? Let you go back into HARO and Cision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the bottom line is, getting content out there, particularly working with journalists, it's all about respect, right? You want them to respect you. You also have to respect them. So it's being aware and understanding what each other's needs are, and working together to attain those goals.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, I have to say, I mean, I have had such a great time. This is all the time we have for Kristen for Association Chat today. So thank you so much, Kristen. I love that you joined us today to tell us a little bit more about PR trends and ways that our associations can do a better job of reaching out and building those relationships. And so, now for some special association chat news. I'd like to announce the addition of 2 new co-hosts for Association Chat, Tamala Blaylock and Dr. Nabil El Garouri. You will begin seeing them in a couple of weeks as we introduce these new faces, voices, and perspectives to Association Chat. And I'm so excited. I am so excited. This is a huge development for me personally, as I've never had official ongoing co-hosts before and have been doing this chat thing weekly since 2009. But as it grows and as I grow, I wanted a chance for all of us to grow together by bringing in some new people who are wickedly smart, who are charismatic, and who have a passion for growing and learning. And by the way, they have more credentials than I do. I mean, my God. So it didn't take much, but they have so many letters after their names. I am so impressed. Anyway, so more news will be coming out about this soon. But if you are connected to Tamala, if you're connected to Nabil on social media, please be sure to welcome them to the Association Chat team because I am thrilled that they're going to be there. If you are in Newport, Rhode Island, this Friday, June 9th, I'll be the closing keynote for the New England Society of Association Executives annual meeting. Then June 25th to 27th, if you are in Colorado, please be sure to come say hi as I MC the CSAE annual meeting in Crested Butte, Colorado, which I'm very excited about. So I hope you've all gained some new insights that will help you as you move through your day, your weeks, your year ahead. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.